the point is this: do not let other people dictate what you can and can't do because they couldn't do it. And I don't care who it is. There are people who love you, and they don't want to see you hurt. So they tell you things because they don't want to see you fail. But failure is good. Failure makes character, because if you can come back from failure, now you're not scared. What's the worst that can happen? I failed at that already. I learned from it, and I'm going to build and be better.
Thanks all for tuning into Dreamcatchers, where we make things happen. Dreamcatchers was formally launched to unlock the hidden potential in successful, self-motivated individuals who desire to take their life forward to the next level but need support to evolve. We are a collective group of professionals with various backgrounds that use our talents to assist those individuals in realizing their wildest dreams by providing education, inspiration, and direction. This podcast is where we share the lessons we've learned along the way to catching our dreams and give you some context around the how and the why to each approach to put you further ahead on the journey to catching your dreams. Are you ready?
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Dreamcatchers podcast. I'm your host, Jerome, and I got a very special guest with me today, John Casmon. I met John at the Multifamily Investor Nation Summit. It sounds funny saying that since that was a virtual summit, but both of us had discussions that we had opportunity to lead. John was talking about thought leadership platforms, and he's got a great podcast that I listen to regularly. It's called Target Insights. And, my favorite question on the whole deal is, what's your favorite place to eat? And so, John, with that little intro, will you dive in and tell the folks a little bit about you and what your current focus is?
Yeah, absolutely, Jerome. First and foremost, thank you for having me on this show, Dreamcatchers podcast, and I'm really excited to be here talking to you today. We've been able to get to know each other a little bit over the last, couple months or so, and really excited about what you got going on and talking to your audience today. So for myself, you mentioned a podcast, Target Market Insights. We just eclipsed over 100 episodes on that. So really excited to teach people about both multifamily and marketing. So we're continuing to expand that platform. We just kind of went to twice a week as far as the podcast episodes go, and just really getting some great guests. You've been on the show, some fire guests, some fire content, and really excited about growing that. To give a little bit more background on myself, I have a background in marketing. So coming out of school, I studied marketing, got an internship at an advertising agency, and basically worked in advertising and marketing for 15 years. Worked on some major campaigns. I've done everything from Super Bowl activations to New Year's Times Square, in the middle of it, watching the ball drop, working on my brands, to NCAA Final Four, to doing some stuff with, rap artists and the different musicians. So I've done a whole bunch of really cool things. But part of what was going on is I was on the corporate side at General Motors on the client side. And I was there from 2007 to 2011. So if any of your listeners were in corporate America or maybe coming out of school around that time, it was really tight getting a job because we went into that recession in 2008. Well, I was working for GM when that was going on. So when y'all turn on CNN and watching reports, I'm turning on watching my boss. You know what I mean? So, going through that process with the layoffs and things like that, that was very tough. And ultimately what it did for me is it took me back to a previous time when I was in school, and I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it talked about the different types of income, and really for me that moment solidified the desire and the need to create my own and not to be solely reliant upon a corporate job to cover my income, because I watched people who had dedicated their careers 20 plus years to this company. In any company, it doesn't matter about that company, but any company. And there's one individual in particular, I remember him leaving a voicemail to everybody on the floor, and he was diabetic, and he basically said he didn't know how he was going to pay for his insulin. This man worked for a company for 20 plus years, large corporations, the dream job. And just like that, this guy doesn't even know how he's going to pay for his medicine. And for me, it was just one of those things where it was sad, but I also think you have to take action. And for me at that moment, I began my journey of both passive income as well as kind of finding that next springboard to a different career down the road.
So what is that springboard? What's producing the passive income for you right now?
Yes, we're heavily investing in multifamily properties. So right now we are, we've helped other folks invest in over 700 units. We actually have another deal we're getting ready to close, but we've invested in over 700 units, valued at around $70 million. So we are just continuing to work with folks to invest. And for me, the way that journey started was we certainly didn't start with super large apartments. We started with the duplex. I moved to Chicago and with the intention of buying or house hacking is what they call it. So we were going to house hack. We bought a duplex. We lived in one unit, and then we rented out the other. We being my wife and I. So we did that. We bought a 2 unit, and for me, I wanted to make sure this thing I had read about and had been studying for years. I mean, going back to college, I was interested in real estate for a long, long time. And it probably took, you know, 10, 12, 10, 11 years to, formally pull the trigger on that first investment purchase. Um, so did that, and that worked, pretty much according to plan, much better than I could have anticipated because I didn't factor in the appreciation. I wasn't factoring in that it was 2012 and that the market was going to just recover and go up, which it did. So we bought a 3 unit building and that did well. We bought an 8 unit building and that started to do well. And the challenge for me was I realized while we were growing this and we were getting this passive income, we had a lot of friends and family and other folks who said, "Hey, I'd love to invest in real estate, but I'm not going to invest the time and energy that I see you doing to invest. I'm not going to go to all these meetups. I'm not going to read all these books. I'm not going to go to all these podcasts." And at first I was, I pretty much shrugged my shoulders because I just told them what I was doing. I'm like, well, that's how you do it. And what I started to learn was there was an opportunity to help those individuals while also helping us because we were investing all of our own money. So every dollar I had, basically, we were saving and we would buy another property. So you want to talk about sacrificing? I lived in that same duplex up until about 3 weeks ago. We lived in that duplex and I had rented it out, the other unit. And, we had bought a house to live. I ended up selling that. And so, we had 2 kids basically in a 1,000 square foot apartment. So it was 4 of us doing
Come
that.
on, man. Are you serious? So
Yeah,
three
yeah.
weeks ago, like when you just moved to
Just
Cincinnati,
moved to Cincinnati. Yeah. I lived in that same place for the last 7 years.
come on
Yeah.
now, you were a top level marketer now. I mean, you make a little bit of change. Why would you do that?
Um, I guess, part of it for me was twofold. One, it's not as it's like my wife's a vegetarian, right? So people ask her like, "Oh, don't you want to try this meat or don't you want to try this steak?" And she's like, "No," because if you've never had steak, you don't miss steak. If you just go vegetarian, you don't miss it. I've never lived in a big house ever. I mean, my dad had a decent sized house, things like somewhere in the 1,500 to 2,000 square feet range. But I grew up in an apartment. So for me, and then coming out of college, I lived in dorms. Coming out of the dorms, going to work in corporate America, I wasn't, I was in Detroit. I saw the writing on the wall to an extent. So I didn't buy a house when I moved there. I was single. Single dude, you don't really need a house. So I rented an apartment. So I've rented an apartment basically since I was 18, So from 18, from dorms to apartment style living is what I've done. So for me, it was easy just to stay doing that. It was familiar, it was comfortable, even for my wife. It wasn't like we had this 3,000 square foot house we downsized to an apartment. So I would say for your listeners, especially those who are a little bit younger, just, buy it. The difference is just simply instead of you paying the rent, you're collecting rent and you're acting just like the other person except they paying the mortgage and you're building your equity. So for me, it was a very simple thing where if I would have waited to do that, maybe I wouldn't have been as comfortable. But doing that flat out, coming straight out of renting an apartment to buying the building, I think was a great strategy for us.
Yeah, no question, man. That's awesome. And the fact that you didn't grow your lifestyle with your income is another key to building wealth. I think that's probably in the millionaire next door. So you told me about the GM and the issues that we were having when in the last recession. Are there a couple of other defining moments that you can think of that kind of got you to the place where you are today?
When I started running out of our money, we were investing because I really didn't want to ask people for money. I was really concerned about uh, coming across as I was begging or asking people for money, and I just didn't want to do that. And I had to have a change of mindset because what I realized when people were asking me about real estate and investing in explaining or sharing that they had an interest, what they were really saying was, man, I really wish there was a way to invest without having to do all the education. Now, at the same time, I was sitting there looking at deals that I could go out and buy, but I didn't have the money because I had tied up all of my money in all the other deals. I never pulled out money. So even going back to that duplex, we bought it. I built up a lot of equity in that and I kept it in there. Or I would do a line of credit and I would buy more properties with it. So I never had like just money sitting in my bank account. When it was sitting, it was just saving, waiting for the next investment. So a mindset shift took place when I started talking to other more successful investors. And I had a friend of mine, and specifically, she went from 9 units to 90 units in all of about 3 months. And it floored me. And I sat down with her. I said, hey, I've known you for a few years. Um, I just want to do breakfast with you. And I would love to pick your brain, right? Everyone always wants to pick your brain, but but she was a friend, so it wasn't like it was there's a value exchange there. And she told me, listen, everyone I know who is really growing, they're doing it one of two ways. The first way is they're flipping properties to generate cash to buy the apartment or the multifamily they're looking for. The second way is going out and working with other investors, pooling the resources together and buying buildings based off of that. Now, being, a bit, I don't know, overzealous, I decided to do both. I do not recommend that. I recommend picking an option and going with one. But the flipping, I realized that was a bit more challenging because flipping is not the same as multifamily investing, right? Flipping is very hands-on. It's every day. There's something taking place. And you kind of have to either have a crew that you really can trust or you have the knowledge yourself or be on site every day. And working in corporate America, I didn't have the ability to be at the property every day. So that didn't work quite as well. It was okay, but it wasn't the right thing for me. Now, working with other investors, on the other hand, especially when you scale into larger apartments where you can hire a professional crew, professional property manager, and other folks to oversee the asset, that worked way better. So that's really where we started leaning in. But that pivotal moment came from a relationship because I started talking to people and asking questions. And that question from her led me down the path of other people's money and work with investors. That led me into meeting my mentor and coach and learning what he was doing. And then that led me into starting to actually talk to people and let them know, hey, here's what we're doing, and starting to raise capital for deals. And ultimately to the point now where we've connected and we've helped a lot of different folks to the tune of around a $70 million portfolio that we've helped investors invest in.
Now, John, when I think about other people's money, I think about the securities laws and some of the stuff where you can get in real trouble if you don't know what you're doing. So I know there's like a 503B and like a 503C, and you know, for a lot of people it gets pretty confusing. In fact, I tripped up on it when we talked a couple of days ago.
Mhm.
So can you talk about the idea and some of the risk associated with taking other people's money into a deal and them what it actually means to be selling securities if that's what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question, a great comment to make. I would say first and foremost, part of the reason I was hesitant, I mentioned this before, was I just didn't want to come across as um, needy or begging for people's money or anything like that. I feel like I'm going to use the term self-made. I know none of us are fully 100% self-made, but the point is that, I put in the work. The money I earned is the money I invested. So I felt uncomfortable at first working with other people. But the SEC feels the same way. They want to make sure that you're operating on the up and up, and they have some laws and some rules to manage the engagement. And you have to keep in mind, this all dates back to different issues and situations that they've come across. So they're trying to protect people ultimately. So there's two things to know, right? There's two types of investors, or I should say, two types of investors that can invest in these kind of deals. There are accredited investors, and sophisticated investors. And then there's non-sophisticated investors. If you're non-sophisticated, then you're not really eligible to invest in most of the offerings that you'll see investors put out there. But accredited, what accredited means is that you are either making an income of $200,000 solo, jointly you're making an income of 300,000, or you have a net worth of $1 million, not including your own residence. Okay. So either one of those three, and you qualify as an accredited investor. Now, a sophisticated investor is someone who doesn't meet the accredited investors criteria, but they are savvy enough to understand and evaluate investments. So maybe it's someone who invests in stocks. Maybe it's someone who invests in real estate. Maybe it's someone who has a profession, like they're an engineer or a financial broker, or they're a real estate agent, but someone who, relatively speaking, has the ability to evaluate investment opportunities. What the SEC wants to make sure is that you're not just taking advantage of folks, right? So just because someone got a little bit of money and they have the money to invest, that doesn't mean that they're savvy or sophisticated enough to actually make that investment. The other piece to it is on the accredited, I should have said this too, it has to be for the last 2 years. So just because grandma, maybe she just got an inheritance, uh, that doesn't mean now you can take grandma's money, or grandma can go and invest in one of these kind of deals and she's accredited because she has it. They want to protect it and make sure that you're fully educated and you've got the right people around you to invest in these deals. So your question was about 506B, 506C. 506C deals are for accredited investors only. So basically, you have to meet one of those qualifications to be able to invest in those deals. There's different laws around what you can do to market a 506C deal. You basically could do whatever you want. You can do a billboard. You can, blast Facebook with it, take out Facebook ads, tell the world, here's what we're doing. A 506B offering, it allows for sophisticated investors to come into the deal. The caveat, though, is you have a cap of how many sophisticated investors you can bring in. So you can only get up to 35 sophisticated investors, and you cannot advertise it broadly. You have to have a pre-existing relationship with each one of those investors, including the accredited investors. So that's kind of the trade-off there between going 506C and 506B on any kind of offering.
The sophisticated.
Hey guys, back in 2016, me and the team decided to formalize Dreamcatchers as an organization who can help people achieve their wildest dreams. If this is you, please visit our website at dreamshouldbereal.com in order to find out the details of our services and how we can help you become a Dreamcatcher. Talk to you soon.
The sophisticated threshold is pretty loose, man. I don't know if I feel comfortable with it or not, but it is part of the game. And the pre-exist, even establishing a relationship, it makes me uncomfortable, because how do you document that? How do you make it so that if something goes wrong, because as long as everything goes right, there's not an issue. But if somebody loses their money and it was probably their last, or they're pretty upset about it, things can get ugly if you get reported to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Do you have any thoughts around that, or how you guys are protecting your company?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One, that's a great question, great comment. There are some gray areas when it comes to, someone's knowledge base or level of sophistication, even the accredited. I mean, just because someone makes a lot of money doesn't mean they actually understand investing. There are folks who maybe they have a highly skilled profession where, from a book standpoint, they're extremely intelligent or skilled in a certain matter, but that doesn't mean they can evaluate investment risk or investment opportunities. So one of the things we do is we do focus on the education for that reason. That's why we do our podcast, where we talk to folks about what to look for. We write articles, we write blogs. And then ultimately, I feel like it's partially my job to educate folks on the deal. Hey, here's what I see in the deal. Here's what I like. Here are some of the risks. Here are the things that we're looking at. Here's how we're going to mitigate those risks. And then ultimately what happens is there's what we call a private placement memorandum, or PPM. And that document really details all the risk and everything else that's involved with the investment. So having someone review that, ask questions, they basically sign a document that states they understand what risks are involved in the deal, that they're comfortable with it, that they are sophisticated and knowledgeable about it. But ultimately, for me, the point is not to rely solely on paperwork. I want people to feel good investing with us. So if someone's not comfortable, there are times where I'll tell someone, hey, you know what? I don't think you're either ready for this deal, or, I'd like to get to know you a little bit better first. But I think that it's comfortable to do that because it's a two-way thing. Investments, as I'm looking to help people, they have to also be the right fit. And I kind of have to do the same process to ensure they're a right fit for our deals.
I woke up to an email this morning from a guy that I guess heard me on one of the podcasts I've done. He was like, hey, man, I'm an LP and we've got some check boxes. I asked if he was accredited or, what else he had going on. And he's not accredited, but he was just reaching out and letting me know he was an LP. And I was just like, well, I don't know what to do with this, right? Because, I'm not going to put you in a deal because I don't know you and you're reaching out to me solely to invest. But, it's interesting just to see how people are looking for opportunities. There's a lot of money in the marketplace, and you just got to be careful with what money you put into your deals from my perspective. Everything that I've done so far has been with people I've known for probably 10 or 20 years. And we've done JV partnerships, which I feel more comfortable with those. I don't think the SEC is coming for me for those. So when you think across, your life, what's the 3 biggest lessons that you've picked up?
Oh, good question. The first one is resiliency, right? So, if I'm thinking about this from different skills or lessons that I want to take away, I think resiliency is the biggest one. I'll give you a couple of examples. I used to wrestle in high school. I know you don't look at me and see, the baby version of The Rock, but, I was a big time. No, I'm kidding. But I did. I wrestled in high school. Now, most people who say stuff like that tell you they were state champ or they were district champ or nah, not me. I lost every match my freshman year. Every match, right? And I would come home. My eye would be like, almost closed from getting it dragged on the mat and all of these different things, man. Just like, I was a little bit of a pretty boy back in high school too. So I used to, grow my hair out, had an afro going and wouldn't get it cut until I got a W. And, I had all sorts of different things. And I remember everyone around me, even people I love. My grandmother's my favorite, person on this planet. And even my grandmother asked me, why don't you quit? And I had a lot of people saying that. And the part of the reason I didn't quit was there was a guy, I was also in marching band. I'm probably a pretty peculiar guy. I used to play chess and marching band, and I also like to fight and wrestle and stuff like that. So I was a strategic fighter, I guess. But in marching band, I remember I was talking to a young lady next to me, and there was a guy behind me, and I told her that, hey, I was going to try for the wrestling team. And he heard me, and he said, oh, you'll never make it. I was on the team last year, and like it's hard. It's harder than anything else you could do. You're not, you won't make it. And I didn't even respond, but I heard him, and that burned in my head. And every day I wanted to quit, I saw him. Hey, I told you it was hard. And I was like, hell no, dude. I'm never giving you the satisfaction. The point is this. Do not let other people dictate what you can and can't do because they couldn't do it. And I don't care who it is. There are people who love you, and they don't want to see you hurt. So they tell you things because they don't want to see you fail. But failure is good. Failure makes character. Because if you can come back from failure, now you're not scared. What's the worst that can happen? I failed at that already. I learned from it, and I'm going to build me better. So I came from losing every match my freshman year. So I got my name on the board for career wins. I was in the top 20 of all time wrestlers at my high school for career wins when I left the school. So the point, and again, I wasn't a state champ, but I never quit. I showed up to practice every day. That leads me into my second lesson, consistency. Show up every day. Show up every day. Even if you're not great, even if you're not practicing or delivering or executing the way you wish you were, just show up. Because by showing up, you already beat most people. If you show up every day, you're going to beat most other people because they're not going to show up. And showing up means anything. I've hosted my podcast for, I think we're on 110 episodes at the time of this recording. There were times when I watched them download numbers and I was like, why am I even doing this? Because if I'm not, getting the traction, sometimes you feel like, man, I'm investing, I'm working, I'm putting in all this work, I'm putting in all this effort. Where's the results? Where are the results? You can't fall in love with the results. You have to fall in love with the process and then tweak it. I'm not saying don't make changes. Step back. Okay, what can I be doing better? All right, why is this not hitting? What's happening here? Adjust, but don't quit. So I think that consistency is really key to having success. And then the third thing is opening up your mindset and asking yourself one simple question. How can I? When you ask yourself, how can I? You open yourself up to the possibilities. How can I raise $1 million? Now you can go from this. You can look at a situation. Let's say you're looking at a real estate deal. And I don't care where you're at in your real estate journey, people. Where market deal, because there's less competition, you can negotiate a better price. Let's say you go to LoopNet and you see a deal and you think it's a good deal, but you need $1 million to buy this deal, and you don't have $1 million. You could look at it one of two ways. You could say, "Damn, I wish I had $1 million. I wish I had the money to do this," or, "Man, if I only had the money to do this." Or you could say, how can I get the money to do this? How can I structure this deal to make this work? Well, maybe the owner or the seller would be willing to carry back a second mortgage. Maybe they'd allow me to do this for 0% down if I paid him a higher interest rate. Maybe I could go get some folks I know to invest in the deal with me. So when you ask yourself, how can I? You open yourself up to solutions. Before, if you don't do that, sometimes you're just staring at a problem. So I would say the third thing is really just shift the mentality of how can I, and that will open up the doors.
That's powerful right there, my brother. I love what you shared. John, what gift are you giving the world?
Wow. Man, that's a heavy question. What gift am I giving the world? Um, I would say the possibilities, possibility. What I mean by possibilities is, I talked to you a little bit about kind of my story, to give you more context. I'm a child who had extremely humble beginnings. My parents split when I was 5 years old. I was on, the free lunch programs, first person in my family to go to college, only person still to graduate from college. And I'm an oldest child. So for me, it's kind of being the example. And I guess it's being a dreamer. I mean, we got the Dreamcatchers podcast. I think part of it is being a dreamer, and being out there and being an example of what the possibilities are. And in some capacities, I still feel like I'm on the journey. And I'm like, I don't even think I should be talking like this because I'm nowhere near where I expect to be. But on the same note, we have to start from wherever you're at today and then reach back and help that guy or the gal who was in a situation where they have it in their head, but they haven't seen anybody who's done it. You got to see it to believe it. And, I started to see it from networking and just being out more and reading books. And once I actually started to meet these people, again, going back to the 9 to 90 unit girl, she was the first real estate investor I met, knew in person, didn't read about in the book or something else, but watched. And I knew her when she had 3 units, and I saw her when she got 9 units. And when she went to 90, I'm like, all right, time out. So when you have that, then this becomes real. So the gift for me that I'm trying to give the world is my journey, my story, and just being a part of it and being transparent with it. I mean, there's a lot of ups and downs with it, but understanding that it is all possible if you stay focused and you stay committed to it.
Now, we haven't talked about this, but I found it to be a commonality on people who have a track record like yours. When you first made this shift from I'm gonna do it all by myself to this dream is bigger than me and what I can do. I need to go enlist other folks in this dream that I'm working on. What happened? Was everybody on board and ready to sign up and give you money, or what happened, man?
So my mentor, he had me make a list of basically a lot of folks who I knew, and told me to prioritize folks who I thought might have an interest in investing. And I reached out to a lot of those people, and I got head nods. But no, they were not lining up for my next offering. Okay. And I think part of that too comes from knowledge. When you start out, you know, you're starting out, no matter how you slice it, you can hire whoever you want to hire, but you're still starting out. If you're not comfortable getting in front of people and presenting something to them, or you don't have the confidence in it, if you feel like you're selling versus presenting an opportunity, then that's going to come across. And I think as I got more and more comfortable with really understanding the value proposition on both sides, that really helped it, us grow and get more engagement. But yeah, starting out, it was tough because I was nervous, and these are friends and people I've known. And, I was a little nervous reaching out to them and talking to them about it. So it was actually easier for me talking to folks who I didn't know, because we could establish relationship, and it was based on this. And it wasn't like, okay, I got my cousin's investment and I hope this goes well. Now we do have some family members who invest with us, but I think that, there's always that growth. So you can do it either way. What I would say is um, be anticipate some pushback, and understand that everyone is not going to be on your vision. Your friends and family are your friends and family, not necessarily your investors. Now, some of them may invest, but keep in mind their personalities and what they want. It may be different. I was always wired like this. I was always trying to figure out why people weren't reading the Wall Street Journal. Like I remember asking my dad, how come you don't invest in stocks? He looked at me like, boy, what? And I mean, it's just one of them things. So I would say you can't expect other people to see your vision. So you really have to stay focused, and don't judge them either. Your friends and family, they're your friends and family. They're not supposed to be lining up for your investment. That's not fair to them. So I would say there's plenty of investors looking for deals, looking for capital. Find the folks who are looking for that. Don't try to get grandma and your cousin to, finance your dreams. There's a lot of folks out there who are willing to do it.
Awesome. So, John, you've seen The Matrix, right?
Of course.
Long time
It's
ago.
been a
Right?
minute though, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But you remember when Morpheus and Neo are standing there? He's got the red pill and the blue pill. Um, I suspect you took the red pill. When was that moment for you? When were you presented with you can stick with the status quo, or you can go off and do something different? When did that happen for you?
Yeah, I would say you get hit with it a couple times, and then there's like a serious time when you really commit to it. I think leaving General Motors, large corporation, even with all that stuff that was going on, I was like crushing it. Like the company was doing well, we rebound, and they were, I was on the path to climb. And I left and moved to Chicago. So that was one of the things where I probably took the first half of the red pill, because I cut off this cushy corporate job. Now I was still working in corporate America. It just wasn't for a large company that could pretty much give me anything I wanted. The second time, though, was when I hired my mentor. And the reason for that was it's the first time I paid money for someone to teach me anything, outside of like a book or something like that, right? It was the first time I had paid another person to teach me anything. And I felt at that moment I was fully vested. And it wasn't like a huge investment, but nonetheless, for me, it was like, all right, now if I'm paying for this, I'm damn sure gonna get my value out of this, right? So, and this was a guy who was walking the walk. He wasn't necessarily the guy he is today, but he was walking the walk. And it's one of those things where when you see success and someone's telling you what they do and how to do it, and they're succeeding, it's like, oh, okay. So at that point, we saw the whole rest of the pill, and you start moving, because you have to stay focused on what you're trying to get. For me, it was very simple. I wanted financial freedom, and I wanted to be able to create the lifestyle where I could do whatever I wanted. And that can change from today to next week. One of the biggest things, I'm super excited. By the time this probably comes out, it will have happened. But my oldest son starts kindergarten in August. And for the last, I don't know, six, 7 years since I got married. Okay. My wife and I, we always talked about we wanted to be wherever we wanted to be by the time he started kindergarten. And I wanted to be there on his first day of school. And not just the first day, but whatever. If he starts playing sports or he has chess club or whatever he decides he wants to do, I want the ability to be there. I don't want to be, oh, I got to work or I got to, nah. We'll build a schedule around, not around the kid necessarily, but around the things that I'm passionate about, and that's it, going back to the wrestling thing. I was a kid who my parents couldn't come to most of my activities. They had to work. My mom worked 2 jobs, so she did what she had to do. My dad worked too. My dad worked third shift, second shift and third shift. So they really couldn't come to a lot of my activities. And you don't really think about it as a kid, especially when you're, a young Black kid. And we don't really talk about, you know, the the mental toughness or the emotional part of it. But I mean, as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, you're still a kid, man. And every kid wants to look out in the stands and see their parents supporting them. And I mean, I know you talked about football, right? Being a football coach, and every kid wants that, man. I remember really bonding with some of my teammates because their parents weren't in the stands either, and it bothered me, man. It really did. It really bothered me, and it's not a knock or anything like that. They did what they had to do, but point is that sometimes when you become a parent, the things from your childhood impact how you act as an adult. And for me, it's not even a money thing. You mentioned I didn't give you a money number, right? I haven't told you money. It's not about the money. I can go back to living in an apartment. I'm good, B. So I can figure that out. It's not so much about the money. It's about how you spend your time. And for me, I always wanted to make sure that I was there for my kids. And that was the important part of it. So the financial freedom, the independence, that's what this is all about for me. And yeah, we want to travel the world and go get our Grant Cardone on and jets and stuff like that too. But number one, I want to be there with the boys, man. I love my boys. So I want to do that and be there for my wife and fam and all those kind of things. So that's, the point. I think sometimes folks get caught up on the money and don't focus on that, man. Focus on who you want to be as a person. I want to be present with my kids. That's the number one thing. I want them to grow up and not look up in the stands and wish daddy was there. And again, because it's working, because he's traveling for work, whatever. Nah, man, it ain't about the money, because the money just make you do more work and have more obligations. So you got to figure out the right balance there. Of, make the money and make that money work hard for you, but build the life that you want in that process.
Woo-wee. Preach, preacher. That's awesome, and it shows so much clarity, John. A lot of people they lose track of what's important, and it's clear that you understand that you want to do some things different. I think we learn from our parents both the things we want to be and the things that we don't want to be. And so I applaud you for prioritizing family. So we're wrapping up, man. I've got 2 more questions. The first one is, what are you most grateful for right now?
Man, I'm extremely grateful for my family, in particular my wife, just being very patient. As I'm a dreamer, so I had these thoughts, like I've had this in my head probably for 15 years, and who knew how it was going to manifest itself. But I've always thought that I could do various things, but being patient with me and going down the path on the journey while I stub my toe at times and hit my head at times, but just being there to support dreaming. Like I said, we never even had a conversation about, well, I wish I had a house or nothing like that. So just being very supportive and understanding and all that, and also just truly being on that journey with me. I would say that's it. And I would say too, man, I'm very thankful for the struggles that I have. And I say that because resiliency is extremely important. There are a lot of people who do well, but the moment they hit, a hardship, they fold because they don't really know how to overcome that, or everything's been handed to them. And, you know, I've been fortunate to have to figure out a lot of things by myself and starting to wise up to know, hey, there's a lot of other people you can lean on. And I would say that's kind of the biggest growth thing for me, is just knowing there's always somebody to call, and don't feel like you have to figure out a situation by yourself. You can always phone a friend. You can always phone a mentor. and reach out. And I would say for your listeners too. I mean, you're listening to this, you may not know who I am, but if there's something that you've heard from this episode that you think either me or Jerome, for that matter, either one of us can help you with, send that note. We appreciate it. It's good to know someone's listening and watching, and it's making an impact. So send that note, send that follow up, and I'm sure we'll both help however we can. But just make sure you're taking that action. I think that's the biggest piece.
Love it, and we'll link up so that you can be found. It's not hard to find you though. I think the majority of your social activities and LinkedIn, but I hear you in your intro talk about sliding in the DM, so I guess you're doing some Instagram stuff too. John, the last question for this conversation, and I just want to tell you, man, I'm extremely grateful to get to know you even on a deeper level. This really pulled out some things that we hadn't even covered in the conversations that we've had to date. And I was a fan of you before, but this just takes it to a new level, man. I really enjoyed your story. What's the one thing you want somebody to take away from this conversation? If, they blanked out on the last 45 minutes and they're coming back, what's their takeaway?
Yeah, I would just say be resilient, set your plans, set your goals. I mean, you have dreams, set a plan for your dreams and go. Take action and be resilient, and don't let other people tell you you can't do your dreams. Just start figuring out a plan. If you open up your perspective and go back to, okay, here's my dream. Let's say your dream is to be an astronaut, just for silly reasons. If your dream is to be an astronaut, people tell you can't be an astronaut. What you have to ask yourself is, how can I become an astronaut? What does it take to become an astronaut? Then you probably want to go talk to some astronauts or talk to some, but I mean, there's a process and you have to break it down methodically to understand, okay, what does it take to accomplish this goal? Who do I know who's accomplished this? Where can I find people who've accomplished this? And then, are there podcasts? Are there books? What can you get from Google? But just start being methodical. And if you want it, go get it. But you got to show up every day and be consistent. I mean, if you add consistency with resiliency, you'll be straight, but just go after it.
Perfect, man. John, thanks again. Hey guys, if you made it to this point of the podcast, I'd love a 5-star rating and review, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. John, again, thank you, man. I really appreciate your time. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me on. All right.
Bye.
If you want to learn more about Dreamcatchers, please visit the website at dreamshouldbereal.com. If you can think of someone who would benefit from these types of opportunities and are willing to share what we're doing with them, we would greatly appreciate it.